Adam Engst on privacy concerns, the iPhone 13, and a whole lot more with the Apple CIDER user group. This is MacVoices. Today's MacVoices is supported by Quip, better oral health made simple. Go to getquip.com/MacVoices to save $10 on a Quip smart electric toothbrush. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joiner. Folks, this is part 2 in a 3-part conversation with Adam Engst and the Apple CIDER user group. This time we start into a broader discussion of privacy as we wrapped up a more specific one in the first part. We talk about iPhone 13, exploding batteries, and a whole lot more. Let's get right back to it with Adam and Apple CIDER.
So the bigger question really is, somebody asked about, security and, in this day and age, nothing is secure. You really don't have privacy no matter what Apple tells you. There really is no privacy. They know locations. They know, So, if you want to have privacy, don't get a smartphone.
Don't get a phone.
Don't go on the internet.
Track you too. Dumb phones have to know where you are so they can ring.
Right.
Realistically, what we've ended up, and you're absolutely right. And I think it was, I can't remember the guy's name, Scott, someone who's the CEO of Sun Microsystems, Scott McNeely. I think he was the first guy who said privacy is dead, and that was about 20 years ago. Because the fact is that whether or not we know it, there's just so much about a modern life that is being tracked in every way. So, for instance, using a credit card, driving with an Easy Pass, carrying a cell phone of any sort, all those things, in some way, shape, or form, reveal information about you. And for the most part, whether or not we know it, we're okay with it.
Most people are willing to give up a little privacy so they can get free email or so they can get free messages to their friends.
And my phone knows that I'm in my house. Well, that's a pretty good bet that I'm in my house. I'm not really worried about that. Now, of course, this is the problem. This is what the privacy proponents always point out is, well, you shouldn't have to do that or think about that. And I'm like, well, that's true. And if you're going to go there, you have to be willing to make concessions to not live in the modern world.
Right.
The modern world is just that way now.
The government requires that you have a piece of paper showing that you're allowed to drive a vehicle.
Yeah.
The horrors.
Yeah. It's one of those things where right now I'm in Rhode Island, and if the authorities wanted to know where I am, and probably in 5 minutes, they get the Easy Pass and my credit cards and all this stuff, and they know exactly where I am in room 115.
Of course, we can tell that.
Yeah. We have your IP address.
You can report me.
Now, realistically, one of the things that is true still, although it's not going in the right direction, is that information is actually fairly hard to assemble. And so just because it could, let's say someone shoots you while we're watching, and we're like, oh no, someone just shot Ken, quick. Where is he?
There have been TV shows with that plot already.
Right, precisely. but the fact is, it would take the police some amount of time to put all those things together to find out if we didn't know you were in Rhode Island.
Right.
That it would be days, if at least days, is my guess, just because all this stuff comes from different places. Now, going forward, of course, we're just getting better and better at linking stuff. So
there was an interesting court case a year or so ago with the police put a GPS tracker on a suspect. I think they put it on his car, like you see in the movies all the time. And
stick it underneath. Always
they
works.
were able to track his locations and figured out he was at these, conspiracy events, and then were able to arrest him. And the lawyer successfully argued, and it went up to the appeals court. At least I don't know if I made it to the Supreme Court. The police cannot put a GPS tracker on your car. Because you pull your car into the garage, and inside your garage you have an expectation of privacy.
Privacy, yeah.
So the police argued that well, we could have just had someone following him. And the court said, that's okay, because you can watch him go into the house. You're still outside. If you went into the house after them, you'd be breaking the law. So they were just trying to save costs.
We live in interesting times.
Yeah.
And partly when I said, what do we as a society think about a device that monitors and reports criminal activity that we undertake? I meant that what do we as a society think? I don't think there's an easy answer. For instance, a car that reports if you're speeding. As Chuck pointed out, we know our cars all know that we're speeding, right? That's really painfully obvious at all times. And it's easy to report that. We can certainly determine it after the fact if there's an accident. But that feels like something that, at what level of breaking the law is it a problem versus not a problem?
The Thruway Authority
goes
said
3 miles an hour over the speed limit. Yeah.
The Thruway Authority said they're not going to do that. Even though with the paper ticket cards you used to get, they could calculate your speed based on the time it took you to get from booth to booth.
And now they take photos of your license plates. If you don't have an easy pass, they'll still bill you. So right. So again, it's like, I think this is. The reason why I'm raising these as questions is I think they're questions that need to be discussed, and it doesn't just come down to privacy has to trump everything, because the problem is that we live in a very different world than we used to. And no one could ever have known anything about your presence, 100 years ago, where it wasn't possible. You had to have eyewitnesses and things like that. And so that's where a lot of our laws and our expectations and our social mores come from. And we're just not in that world anymore. And I think that not enough of those discussions are taking place. As you say, is a GPS different than having the guy following? I don't know. It's arguments, and then it's what does society feel that's worth? Is it worth?
We always want to stop the bad guys, but we don't want you to infringe on us,
right? And we don't want to, and until we're affected by the bad guys, then suddenly we want you to stop the bad guys.
Just think of this. I'm in Rhode Island, and on my iPhone, it came up red light camera ahead. Okay. So I'm thinking, oh, wait a minute. In the future, they're going to have devices in your car, and it's going to know the speed limit is 55, and it won't let you go over 55.
I actually want that. There's lots of times that I'd be happy to drive the speed limit. I just don't want to think about it.
Right.
If everybody else is driving the speed limit.
Basically the car would control how fast you go based on what highway you're on.
There have been police agencies that have tried to shut down those red light warning cameras. Waze, driving GPS app will warn you about speed traps, and they've tried to shut those down because some of that's just revenue. If you're doing 100 miles an hour on a 55, you're obviously reckless, and they'll find you. But if you're doing 60 and a 50, then
but see that's actually the thing, is they won't. So reasons I won't get into. I've had to make several trips to Stamford, Connecticut, 4-hour drive, going down towards New York City. And the first time we took the slightly more New York City route, there were 3 or 4 times there were people driving 100, weaving in and out of traffic. Where I'm going 80 thinking, or 75 or 80 thinking I'm like going a little faster than I'd like, and this guy blows by me like I'm standing still. Then the ambulance, 3 lanes, I'll go in one direction, the ambulance goes through, everyone kind of pulls over a little bit so the ambulance can get through. The ambulance speeds through, 6 people in his draft. I was like, seriously? Throw the book at them. That's the sort of thing where okay, that's not speeding, that's reckless endangerment, and you should suffer for that in some way because you could kill someone. It's like, that's what I was saying. There's just differences. That's not going 75 in a 65 zone. That's one slight mistake and you've killed someone.
There's a special level in New York called depraved indifference.
Really?
Yeah. They can charge you for that. So like 125 miles an hour. That's beyond reckless endangerment. That's depraved indifference.
I'd like that. I like that. Okay.
We'll get you a T-shirt, Adam.
Chuck, have we gotten off topic yet or not?
Well, we weren't sure what the topic was, so we just made that one the topic.
I want to do a little audience participation here because there's one thing that you haven't touched on at all, and I'm kind of surprised. How many people have either a doorbell camera or any of the security cameras inside or anywhere on your property outside?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we all do. Yep.
Okay.
Oh really? Yeah. See, I don't at all.
Okay. So if one of you tries to leave your house, leaves your phone inside, leaves everything, all the electronic, we're still watching. We're still watching through all those cameras, and the interesting part is, I mean, because I'm guilty, but I have them pointed I have one in my home, but I have most of mine pointing out my windows so I can see what's going on outside.
Mm-hmm.
And my neighbors
delivered.
Yeah, exactly. And my neighbors obviously have no say in whether I'm pointing a camera, at them in their window if they're close enough, or just see who's coming and going in their driveway. So, I mean, we live in a surveillance state. It's just, that's the way it is. And we've done it to ourselves voluntarily because of convenience and security.
I have a quick technical question.
Wait, you think this is a technical talk? Oh, I don't know about that. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, this is one of my token ignoramus questions.
Charlie,
is there a way to copy and paste an image into the Zoom chat?
That's a good question.
I don't know.
You can upload a file. There's a little file icon button.
Right.
Upload it to the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, but that's linking to stuff.
That's only linking
Dropbox.
to shared services.
So I tried to drop an image into the chat. If I send to everyone, it's letting me. I'm getting a green plus, so that it's like I could drop, but it's not doing anything. It's like the feature is halfway there.
As long as it's not CSAM, Adams, try to send it and see what happens.
Is there something in the new app? Is there something in the new app feature? They have the new app feature. Is there something in there that would allow something like that? I don't know. In Zoom, there's a new thing, and it's apps.
Yeah. So I just selected that.
What's the menu for that?
It's for third-party companies to create new apps to let Zoom do more things.
Where's the menu for that?
At the bottom of the screen with all the... Oh, you're on an iPad?
No, I'm on a Mac.
On the Mac, at the bottom of the screen with all the buttons, it's the last button.
The one that says reactions?
It's right next to reactions.
Aha! I figured it out. Okay, so you can all see the results from the race one of my races I manage. Basically, it was a Dropbox a file. And so I was able to link a Dropbox file in. So in theory, you could put an image in Dropbox, Charlie, and link to it that way.
Or OneDrive or Google Drive or Box.
OneDrive, yeah. It's a weird. What it
all of them
says
but
to me,
Apple.
what it says to me is that they're trying to make a general feature. They're not trying to be platform specific, because this would require them to be Zoom is an okay Mac app, but it's not great. So. That's my guess.
Charlie, I think you probably need to update your Zoom app to get that app's feature.
Actually, yeah, you very well may be right, although I sort of obsessive compulsively check for updates after every time I go on Zoom, but so they must have done it since then. I'm looking at that race thing there, so that part worked. But in other words, the image I have would be in my Finder, and that's the one place you can't get it from, huh?
Doesn't seem like it, yeah.
All right.
I don't know, Adam. I just tried. See what happens, because I just drug a ping over, and I got a green.
Yeah, I got a green thing, but nothing happens when I drop it.
Yeah, but you're right. Wonder if I do that. Nope.
So everyone should look at the race results and see if you recognize anyone. There's definitely people from Rochester in this race. And many of them are old. It's a master smile.
That's
Well,
a really
that's interesting.
question.
It opened the PDF from your Dropbox.
Yeah, it's not even, you're not even getting the file. It literally linked to the file in Dropbox.
Yeah.
So, oh yeah, like, does anyone here know Edna Heyer? She lives in Fairport.
No.
Oh, Williamsville, Sandy Balling. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We don't need to talk about this. So anyway, good question, Charlie. And I think the answer is you found something that Zoom could improve.
Yeah. Thanks for giving it a try, guys.
But going back to the camera issue, one of the security issues with cameras, especially the cheap Internet of Things, is that there's almost no security, especially on the cheaper ones. Yeah. And there are flaws being found in so many of these cameras that never get fixed and allow people to get in. There was a great case I talked about on Security Now last year, where someone bought a camera. I think it might even have been a D-Link camera, pretty reputable brand, returned it, and then a few weeks later started getting notice that there were new pictures in his camera because the camera ID didn't change. And so whoever bought that used camera was now taking pictures, and they were going to the first guy's account because it still existed. So there was no security between them. So one of the things you can do to help a little bit is put your security cameras, your thermostats. I got an air conditioner that has Wi-Fi in it, so I can turn it off if I forget after I go to bed. Put those on your guest network so that they can't be used as a foothold in your private network. So if somebody breaks into your smart light bulb, you don't want them to be able to get to the rest of your computers.
Yeah. Or use HomeKit. So these cheap things are not usually HomeKit compatible. They have their own apps, and that's where the security is really terrible. One of the big reasons, if you're going to be doing home automation stuff, to use HomeKit, aside from the fact that's sort of built into Apple operating systems, is that Apple does do a better job of security than pretty much everyone else. Even if they are not perfect, they are trying. And so some of these really, like HomeKit, they came out with HomeKit Secure Video, which makes sure that your video is properly protected and encrypted and things like that when you're using a HomeKit Secure Video compatible camera.
And there were supposedly the recordings were going to go into an Apple HomeKit file bucket. Yeah. Have they started that already?
I'd have to go back and look at. Glenn Fleischman did a big article on that 6 months ago for us, so I don't remember the exact detail, but I think it was all live. So yeah. I mean, that was one of the big features from iOS 14, as I remember, when they updated all that. So yeah, I mean, all this stuff is it's very, I don't know, it's both distressing and interesting from a standpoint of, because the other like huge question this gets into is, what does it mean to trust people? Because whenever there's these things come out, it's like, oh, I don't trust Apple, I don't trust Google, whatever. Well, I mean, or the other one is like, I don't trust the government. Well, you kind of trust them to like run the post office and keep your food safe and all those other things. And so it seems to be very interesting little slicing and dicing of what trust means and what we think about it. But I think people use the term so generically that it can overwhelm the nuance of I'm not in favor of this particular activity of the government, as opposed to, building roads and plowing the roads and treating the water and, ensuring that all those sorts of other things that we just assume in our daily lives are going to be true are true because of the government. Or we trust Apple that they're going to, when we buy an iPhone, that it's going to have guts in it. It's going to basically work like an iPhone. They could just sell us a cardboard box with nothing in it, and that would be a breach of trust. But they don't do that. So so we trust Apple to do a lot of things, and it's tricky to understand like when and how that gets modified by the nuance of a particular change or awareness of something happening. I mean, often these things are happening already. We just aren't aware of them.
And backing up half a step, I just found a Zoom tech note on how to send a screenshot or a file. It doesn't seem to work.
How old was the tech note?
I put it in the chat.
Yeah.
It says there's supposed to be a button.
Yeah. Okay. Chat.
Maybe the host has to turn on advanced chat options.
I don't know, Stephen. It was like trying to make you co-host.
I know.
I went to the I went to the page and it said do this. I do it, and the option is not there. So
yeah.
Sometimes I find instructions like that assume you have Windows, but this one specifically says Mac.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
So they took it out in a later version and haven't updated their tech notes.
Yeah. So what's your point?
Okay, so let's come back on topic. How many people here think they're going to be getting an iPhone 13 when they ship September, October, whatever? Who's looking forward to the iPhone 13?
I'm hoping my boss gets one so I can upgrade to her 10.
You're holding out for that iPhone 6S still, aren't you, Steve?
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting. I mean, obviously, one thing I love about like new iPhones is that they will be the best iPhones ever, right? Like that's a guarantee. And the only question is, will it be enough better than what you have, or do you need to buy another one just because of like you broke your old one or it's on its last legs or whatever? So I'm always curious, like how significant the upgrades are. I have an iPhone 11 Pro, and so I'm fairly likely to upgrade. I usually upgrade every 2 years, just in the kind of keeping up with the technology. But it does sound as though the changes in this one are relatively evolutionary.
The fact that they have an annual upgrade program means enough people are doing it to make it worth Apple's while.
Yep, I'm on the upgrade program, and I'm always surprised at the number of people that aren't, because so many of the people I'm talking about, they buy a new iPhone every year and then they're looking for a way to sell it. Now, admittedly, some of them
don't think they're gonna, so they don't want to pay the extra money.
Yeah, I guess, but now, admittedly, some have wives, kids,
I've always done
employees to hand them down. Yeah. So there's a good reason to do that part. But if you're a solo person, why wouldn't you do the upgrade program? Because it's
sooner or later expensive.
Yeah, and sooner or later it's going to catch up with you. I'm going to have to pay off an iPhone at some point, but hopefully I'll be dead by then, and it'll be for somebody else to deal with.
It's your estate.
Yeah, exactly. It's just have to reserve this much money to pay off the iPhone. This edition of MacVoices is supported by Quip. Better oral health made simple. Go to getquip.com/MacVoices to save $10 on a Quip Smart Electric Toothbrush. With the Quip Smart Electric Toothbrush and the Quip app that connects to it via Bluetooth, you can take one more step down the quantified lifestyle path. You can track when and how you brush and get tips and coaching to improve your habits. That's one benefit. Another is that you can earn points for improving and maintaining your good habits, and then redeem them for goodies from Quip and their partners. Goodies like a chance to win a $2,500 bathroom makeover, refill credits on other Quip items like the watermelon or mint toothpaste, refills on the Quip floss string, a solar battery charger, and $5 Target e-gift cards. And getting those goodies is easy when your toothbrush tells you what to do, both through the tracking and through the built-in 2-minute timer that pulses every 30 seconds to remind you when to switch sides and help you clean your whole mouth evenly. And if you want your kids to develop those good habits early, there's a kid-sized electric toothbrush from Quip 2. Start getting rewards for brushing your teeth today. Go to quip.com/MacVoices right now to save $10 on a Quip Smart Electric Toothbrush. Start getting rewards for brushing your teeth today. Go to getquip.com/MacVoices right now to to save $10 on a Quip Smart Electric Toothbrush. That's $10 off a Smart Electric Toothbrush at getquip.com/MacVoices. That's spelled get, G-E-T, quip, QUIP.com/MacVoices. Quip, the Good Habits Company. Thanks to Quip for their support of MacVoices.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I mean, as I said, we've always done hand-me-downs, although that chain just got broken because our son graduated from Cornell and moved to Vancouver, Canada, actually, to go to do a PhD program at Simon Fraser University. This was in August, and 3 days before he left, his iPhone 10, which was a hand-me-down, the battery expanded and broke the phone. I mean, it cracked the screen and it was like bending it and everything like that. And it was like, I don't even know if you can fly without a phone these days, especially to Canada where you have to use the ArriveCAN app to, to get in. I mean, I'm sure there's ways around it, but they're probably not pretty at this point. And, we were, of course, in the, you're not allowed to fly to another country during a pandemic without a phone. And so, so he got a new phone right away, but it was an interesting situation. We've never been forced to do that before by a breakage that was entirely not no one's fault. I mean, battery just expanded. So
that's a little bit scary because that means to me that if this because I'm an active nicotine addict refers to a vape I had, but the case of the vape split and expanded, and I was glad that it was made that way because I have others that the case would not do that, and at that point, I think they would just explode.
It's not a good thing. These lithium-ion batteries can be a real problem, and I think vapes are actually some of the things that the airlines they don't allow you to check them because of that. Isn't that right?
Oh yeah, no. Yeah. But my point is that it's just as well that the iPhone gave away. Rather than hung tough until it exploded.
Yeah.
We see a lot of times on the Macs, the expanding battery pushes up on the bottom of the trackpad. So your trackpad stops working, and that could be a bad battery.
My wife had an 11-inch MacBook Air, and at some point she's like, something's funny with. I mean, it's like she couldn't quite figure it out because it just felt funny, and I wasn't using it, so I took sort of one look at it. I was like, yeah, because the case is bent. And it was indeed the battery had expanded. And so and part of the problem is what do you do when you get one of these? And I'll tell you what I do, but I don't know if this is absolutely the correct thing, is I put it outside on the patio on concrete. Because if this thing goes, it's you don't want it inside. You don't want it anywhere where it can catch fire or catch anything else on fire. And what we in fact did is we had an old electric fry pan that didn't work anymore. We were going to recycle it and something, and hadn't gotten around to it. And so we put it in that fry pan, the battery in that fry pan. I'm like, okay, it's in metal. It should be safe now.
Apple made us buy a fire safe. As part of the security and battery safety protocols, and I joke that it's a reverse fire safe. It's not to protect the stuff inside when there's a fire outside.
To protect you from the stuff inside.
Yeah, and it's got 3 or 4 inch thick walls. It's got a spring close on it, so it takes a lot of effort to open the door, and heaven forbid you slip because it's going to slam real close to make sure everything stays inside. Wow. And we're supposed to have an outside vent hooked up to it, but we haven't gotten around to drilling a hole through the wall. But fortunately, we've had a bunch of swollen batteries, but we haven't had one breach yet.
Yeah. Well, none of the ones. His phone. It was the same thing actually. What I ended up doing was taking them to the Tompkins County hazardous recycling and hazardous waste because they can deal with that kind of stuff there. But yeah, I was like, this is not. You don't want to mess with these. You don't just get rid of this stuff.
Yeah, they put so much effort into packing as much power into these batteries to make them as small and light as possible that they're just on the verge of collapse, basically. And one of the ironies is the 16-inch MacBook Pro has a 97 watt-hour battery in it, because the airline maximum is 100 watt hours. If you have more than 100 watt hours of lithium batteries, you cannot board the airplane.
Fascinating.
Adam, let me tell you what the Monroe County Recycling Center told me to do with that bulging vape.
Yeah.
Throw it in that box over there.
With all the other ones.
Right. Whatever.
I did find that a lot of the battery recycling centers around town, Batteries Plus, a big chain store that recycles batteries, they won't take them if they're swollen. They want to charge you $5 a piece for a swollen battery. So we did find some of the electronics recycling will take it, and that was crazy too. They didn't even want them separately. They said dump it in this bin. So they had a giant bin that we put all the batteries in, and then all the broken computer parts.
That feels wrong to me because, man, if one of those things goes and it's next to all the other lithium-ion batteries, that seems like a terrible idea.
Yeah.
Well, that was the ValueJet crash in Florida. That it's oxygen generators. You know, the thing in an airplane where you yank the hose and the oxygen comes out. That's not compressed gas. It's actually an oxygen generator. There's two chemicals in there that combine to form oxygen, and the result is heat. And there was a series of unfortunate incidences where a bunch of decommissioned oxygen generators got marked as empty oxygen canisters and thrown into a box. And then the FBO they were trying to clean up their shop because they were having visitors come in to bid a new project. They put this box back in the ValueJet to go back to their corporate warehouse, and they weren't safed properly because you really has anyone had to yank on one of those things to get the oxygen flowing? You have to yank them pretty hard to break the pin. And worse than like a fire extinguisher where you got to squeeze it so hard to break the pin. And there's a procedure the airlines are supposed to use to safe those pins. But because they got labeled as empty oxygen canisters, nobody did it. And so the thing's bouncing around inside the cardboard box. There were a bunch of old airplane tires they threw in there too. And because of the change in pressure in the cargo hold, the airplane tires popped, that jostled the oxygen canisters more, that caused one to breach, which then triggered all the rest of them and brought the plane down in the Everglades. That was the one that it came down like nose first at 500 miles an hour in the Everglades, and they could barely find any of it left. They did some testing on it, and everyone was shocked that like a 5,000 degree fire started in their testing facility on how bad it was. And the lithium batteries are about the same. There were a lot of YouTube videos in the early days of people drilling holes through batteries and go, "Wow, look at all that smoke coming out." No, don't drill a hole in your battery.
That would seem to be obvious.
Speaking of batteries, my 2013 late 2013 MacBook Pro, I couldn't do a Time Machine on it. And it turns out that the battery had expanded. When you took the back off, it looked like it was balloons on all of them.
Wow. Yeah.
And unfortunately, with that model, it's glued to the underside of the top case.
Yep.
So it's a rather expensive repair.
Yeah.
I have seen there's companies that make kits where you can with solvent that you pour into your computer to dissolve the glue so you can replace the battery.
That seems like another bad idea.
Yeah, without dissolving your logic board while you're in there.
I will say that with the 11-inch Air that we had, it was actually very easy to disassemble, take the battery out, and put a new one in.
2013 is when they started with the batteries that were glued to the top case.
Yeah.
Now in 2020 they changed the glue, so it's glue strips. It's a lot like it is on the phones. There's strips of glue at the VHB, very high adhesive bond, and you can pull those strips out and replace the battery now. as a service provider. They're not considered user replaceable still.
So it's a little bit more like the iMac screen strips, where it goes around the outside of the screen. Yep. Yeah, I did actually. You can see here. I have it sitting on my floor. A 27-inch iMac, and this iMac desperately needed to have its SSD pulled because the SSD failed. And it failed in such a way that the computer was actually unstable. Like the thing wouldn't mount. It was completely dead from the use standpoint. Just having it in there was problematic, and so I actually had to pull it apart. Cut the tape, pull it apart, take the SSD out, put in a new one, and then it worked fine. And it was just fascinating that that having that bad card in there would really cause all that. You sort of think, oh, it's dead, but no, it's not just inert.
Yeah, putting spurious data back into the SATA bus probably.
Oh, it was crazy. The weirdness this computer had. Wi-Fi took 3 minutes to turn on. Literally, you'd boot the computer, and it would be sitting there, and you're like, no Wi-Fi menu, and then 3 minutes later, Wi-Fi would pop on. You're like, wow,
that's a different bus. Ken, Ken in the meeting has kind of a side business in replacing hard drives with SSDs and iMacs, and he's done a bunch of them for friends and family, and did a meeting here once to. So it's relatively easy if you're not too timid.
I actually, to be honest, I actually did two. I had my managing editor's 2014 iMac had also gotten flaky. His problem was a Fusion drive where the SSD had failed, and same kind of thing, just like random flakiness. And so, I'd actually taken it somewhere initially, and they were just like, "Oh, we're just going to unplug the hard drive and plug in your replacement SSD." And I was like, "Yeah," but then it's the same thing. The dead blade SSD caused problems.
And that's on the back side of the logic board to make it harder to get out.
Precisely. And that's why they didn't want to fix that. And they're like, "Oh, this will fix it." And I believed them. And I'm like, yeah, didn't.
Yeah, I've done about 30 of the during the pandemic.
Wow. You must be great at it right now.
Except there's one iMac that always gives me a problem. It's like a 2009 iMac.
Huh.
Because the video connector on the 21-inch iMac is so flimsy and so that you try to put it back in, and then it rips it all up, and then it's a mess. And you try to get a new one, you do the same thing. So I keep away from the 2009s.
And you hope you don't rip the connector off the logic board, because then you got to replace that.
I
had that happen once with a screen. We had it sitting on the iMac while we were finishing testing, and somebody bumped it, and the screen just fell off. We hadn't sealed it up yet, and ripped the cables off.
Oh, yeah.
I did that once, and it's not pleasant.
Just once.
Good thing it was one of my old computers, so. Somebody else's.
In this case, with both of these 2014 27s, neither of them were necessary. They had been replaced, and so it was only an upside if I managed to repair them, and it took me a couple hours. Then it was quite a bit faster in the second one, going through a step by step, but it was definitely doable. I mean, hardest thing, the iPhone, I forget which iPhone model, maybe it was the iPhone 5, which I replaced the battery in it, and I'm like, yeah, never again. That was just too hard. But the iMacs, they were tricky, but you could do it. Some of the stuff you obviously just need to be, be a professional, have the tools, have the training, all that.
With some of these iMacs, when you take them apart, when you use the suction cups and you take the glass off, and then the hardest part about the whole operation is then trying to get the glass clean
back on
both sides.
Yeah,
both sides, getting it clean without any squeaks or anything. That's the hardest part, believe it or not.
And it's actually getting worse. The 24-inch iMac, I haven't had to take one apart yet, but I've read the manual. It's now glued on all four sides, And there's two special service wedges you have to get, because you got to lift up one edge of it so you can cut the glue down that side and disconnect a bunch of cables. Then you got to lift up the other edge of it and cut the glue on it and undo those cables. And then do the reverse when you put it back together again. It didn't have to be that thin. I wouldn't mind seeing screw holes. Or in the old way, when the glass was magnetized on and you pull the glass off and there's all the screw holes. That was nice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's definitely would have been getting into the whole right to repair issue.
Exactly what I was going to say.
Precisely.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things. I was going to say, just I don't think manufacturers should be precluded from design that they wish to do. But there are clearly times when they're just making it hard to make it for the sake of making it hard. And that's just unconscionable. Or it really would be just as easy to have a screw or a magnet or whatever, as opposed to, just pouring glue in there. Sometimes it feels like they're.
I remember the early days of the white iMacs, the G4s, the flat panel iMacs. They were user serviceable. That you call up Apple, you diagnose your problem, they ship you a part, and you replace it. We got so many computers that came in for service because people ripped cables. They pulled the cable out of the socket instead of disconnecting the socket. And it was just, and half the people didn't want to have to replace it themselves. Yeah. So I can see why Apple went away from that. And then ironically, on the Dell side, we were Dell authorized for service. They wouldn't talk to us as a service provider. We had to pretend we were the customer, and they would send us a service part, and then we could call back and get talked through how to install it. But they wouldn't talk to a service company. It had to be the end user, and only the end user could buy parts.
One of the perfect examples of making it hard on customers, the 21-inch iMac. Now, the 27-inch iMacs, you have a little slot in the back, or used to have it underneath, where you can just unscrew it, or take it and put the memory in.
They all used to have
on the later 21-inch iMacs, you had to take almost the whole computer apart just to put in more memory.
And the RAM is on the back side of the logic board, not even the front. And then the ultimate annoyance is the iMac Pro does not have a RAM door. And really? The Pro is the machine that you would expect to upgrade.
How do you put RAM in an iMac Mac Pro? Oh no, the iMac Pro you're saying. Right, the iMac Pro. Right.
Yeah, you tear it all apart.
Yeah, the iMac Pro was a terrible design. I was like, come on, guys. You're just trying to bide time here. I never upgraded that machine. So
the trash can Mac Pro didn't work, and we need something better.
We need something better. Look, we can make it matte black and give it a big Xeon.
So now that's the rumor now about the 27-inch iMac is going to get replaced with a 32-inch space gray, because that's not available in the 24-inch colors, to replace both the 27-inch iMac and the iMac Pro.
Well, I will admit, after getting an M1 MacBook Air and seeing how it performs, I replaced this 2014 with a 2020 iMac last August, and I would have to think really hard if they came out with a 27-inch or larger iMac with an M1 or M whatever, because the performance on that MacBook Air is it's almost shocking.
Yeah.
And so, not that I feel like the 2020 iMac is slowing me down or anything, but just it's so shocking on the other machine.
It will drive the 6K monitor.
That's true. And if they want to give me one of those for less than $6,000, I might consider it. No, I say I have this 27-inch iMac with a 27-inch Thunderbolt display, and it's a really nice set. I would be very sad to have to upgrade to something that was not as convenient in terms of like the monitor matching the Mac in terms of size and just physical ergonomics and everything. So we'll see. There's been rumors about Apple coming out with a lower priced monitor because you almost couldn't come out with a higher priced one than the Pro Display XDR, and that would be nice to see. As a companion for either the iMac or the Mac Mini in particular, or as something for just a normal Mac Pro user who doesn't need a Pro Display XDR.
Yeah. One of the things we did hear a lot when the Pro Display came out, especially in the video world, is that really competes with a $30,000 or $40,000 reference monitor, and at $6,000, even $1,000 more for the stand. That's a steal, for what it compares against.
Right. But
for the average folk, no.
They shouldn't have even mentioned it in the public. It's like this is just for video professionals, and I'm sure it's gorgeous. I said I would love to have a 6K monitor on my desk. But
did you see Marquez Brownlee's setup? He's got 2 Mac Pros and 2 6K monitors.
Someone's making too much money from YouTube.
Yeah. Well, then iJustine got one of each of the 24-inch iMacs.
Yeah, so what do you have back behind you there, Chuck? Come on. How's podcasting doing?
Those are just 2 27-inch Dell monitors. There's nothing fancy about them. In fact, they're not even the ones with all the fancy USB-C hubs.
They're just trimming your set trimmings, is what you're saying?
Oh no, they work.
Oh, okay.
They're great. But they're just the bottom of the, because I've got USB ports on my Macs and I can put a USB dock on it. Why am I going to pay for the extra money to have them pack it into a monitor? It just didn't make any sense to me because I really only wanted the screen real estate.
Yeah.
And a lot of monitors that have speakers in them, the speakers are so crappy anyway, you wonder why they bothered.
Exactly. Neither one of these have speakers. So,
and you've clearly got some nice speakers behind there. So, why bother?
Yes, I was able to pick up 2 28-inch Samsung monitors to go with my iMac for $250, and they work beautifully.
28 inches in odd size.
For $250, it was worth it because it has it's a 4K monitor.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Adam Engst is back in the third and final part of our conversation with the Apple CIDER user group. Next time, we talk about the M1 Macs and the power they deliver, the Apple Watch 3 and what we can look forward to there, why or why not folks are looking forward to SharePlay, and have a little fun with some of the new Zoom settings. That's next time on MacVoices, and I hope you'll join us. Until then, and as always, I'm Chuck Joiner. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.